Ninjago Crystallized has finally finished airing, and if you count the specials, this makes it the 15th season of the show and the 18th piece of overall content, which if you really stop to think about it is absurd. Almost everyone I've talked to about this show has either only heard of it or stopped watching after seasons 2 or 3. I personally stopped watching after Hands of Time and the Ninjago movie, which I already made a video about, but all this time I had no idea this show was still going, or the fact that it was still good. Not every season is a banger, but the fact there was never a consistent drop in quality for a series running for this long is nothing short of impressive. One day this year, I woke up in a cold sweat remembering all the good times I had with this show. I wanted to check out the newer seasons. Luckily, I managed to watch full seasons on LEGO's YouTube channel before shit. Nevertheless, I'm fully caught up now, and I think this is prime time for a ranking. Enough of the intro, let's get it. In last place, we have what else? Day of the Departed. There's not much I can add here that hasn't already been said, but it mainly boils down to great concept, terrible execution. A story like this where most of the previous villains come back and have battles specific to each ninja, with Cole being the main center point and serving as an end to his ghost story, sounds amazing. But unfortunately, this special just couldn't deliver due to questionable writing choices and the runtime not doing it any favors whatsoever. This concept was way too big for its britches, and if this was a whole season, it might have been a lot better with more room to breathe, but as it stands, it remains dead last. For many reasons, I'm giving Hands of Time the second to last spot. This is by far the most forgettable season. The whole time travel element is cool, I mean it's not like we've already seen that before or anything, but my main issues lie on the writing and the animation. Aside from a few key moments, the animation in this season is about as smooth and fluid as my ass hair. I swear to God, it's so choppy and rigid you could clean dishes with it. This was the first time the show was handed off to a new writer, and unfortunately it does show. But then again, I think a plot like this for a show on its 7th season would probably be hard for any new writer to work around, and for that I'd say it could have been a whole lot worse. I do love the ninjas' new outfits, even if that's probably where all the budget went, and I do appreciate the focus on Kai and Nia and their parents. There is a lot going on in the season, but it's just not that interesting, and like I've said before, being boring is way worse than being awful. The Island is an interesting spectacle. Do I think this particular season is terrible? Not at all, but it's so unremarkable it kind of stings. The new stuff it introduces is extremely underwhelming, and overall is just meant to set up Seabound, which in the end I think was a good call, just nothing I would ever go back to again. It's pretty much just more Ninjago content, and when you look at it that way, I think it did its job just fine. The number 15 spot is going to Prime Empire for a lot of the same reasons as Hands of Time. It was certainly not lacking in the animation department, but overall, I was just super bored. This whole concept of being stuck in a video game has been done to death, and since they already did similar stuff in Season 3, but more impactful, I just wasn't as interested. The villain is also just straight up nothing. I really wasn't a fan of this season. It does have its moments, but failed to make an impression, at least to me. Secrets of the Forbidden Spinjitzu is often seen as one of, if not the worst season, but let's be rational for a minute. On one hand, I think the animation for the most part is stellar, the themes and ideas explored in these two halves are very interesting. On the other hand, I find Asphira to be an incredibly lazy villain that just adds to Wu never telling the ninja about anything. Most fans seem to like the Ice chapter a lot more, but I don't know, I wasn't really feeling this one either. I'm starting to question if I actually like this series while writing this script. It has good ideas and great character moments, but I think this season is very bloated, repetitive, and even wasted potential for the most part. Moving on. The pilots will always be near and dear to my heart. It's the first piece of Ninjago media, so it's a bit rough around the edges, but honestly, it gets the story across really well. I think having Kai be the central ninja for a short time was a very good call, although I do wish we got to know more about the other three ninja, because when we're first introduced to them, they're kind of just there. But overall, this was a very solid introduction, and going back to it after all this series has been through just feels so simple and fun. Rebooted was a season that I was never too fond of. It undercuts the final battle from the second season, and it honestly feels like it's trying to do too much. Ninjago itself advances their technology 100 years in like 4 months. They go to space, and Zane's sacrifice I thought was executed extremely well, but he was brought back in the very next season. Even Cole got to be a ghost for at least a season before he turned back to normal. And don't even get me started on that dumb fucking love triangle. As for the positives, I think Pixel is a great addition. This is also the season where the ninjas' elemental powers become their own, and they do everything they possibly could with this concept, making it one of the more ambitious seasons. It's not one of my favorites, but I still like it just fine. Season 2 is just so special to me. The highs of this season are astronomical, especially in the case of the final battle. The issue with this season is honestly a very slow and frankly uninteresting start. I don't think any episode was unnecessary, but it just cannot compete with where it eventually goes. This is one of the few times in the series where Lloyd is actually a cool character. Once he becomes an adult, he's like the most basic and barren of all the ninja, but seeing him finally fulfill his destiny against the Overlord will always be one of the best things my eyes have ever had the pleasure of witnessing. Season 1 does not reach the same spectacle that Season 2 had to offer, but on the other hand, it's way more consistent. This is one of the meatiest Ninjago seasons ever. There is a lot going on, but it never feels bloated, and it balances everything surprisingly well. All the characters, both new and old, are just so good here. It may not reach the same highs as Season 2, but would you rather have something that goes from okay to amazing, or something that's just really good from start to finish? Let me know what you think. Okay, listen, people fucking love Skybound. I've seen some people have it at number 1. I am not one of those people. I think Nadakon is a great villain. I love the setting and the theme of both genies and pirates, and Jay is actually really good in this. Having Jay as the protagonist, even if it's temporary, sounds like an awful idea, but they do it super well by focusing on his relationship with Nia. There's nothing in this season that I majorly hate or dislike. It's a very good season. This is simply a case where I enjoy the other seasons a lot more. March of the Oni is the 4-episode special to end off the Oni trilogy, and it's very good, but there's also a lot wrong with it. The shorter runtime doesn't give a lot of time for explanation of the Oni creatures, and that whole thing with Cole falling off the balcony is the dumbest and most pointless thing I've ever seen in all of Ninjago. We know he doesn't die. There's zero explanation for how he survived and ultimately amounted to nothing. This one thing is one of the most baffling and dumbest decisions I've ever seen. On the other hand, everything else I absolutely loved. Garmadon is super funny, and his arc in the special feels very natural, and I love all the callbacks to earlier seasons with the Tornado of Creation, Kai forging the golden weapons back to their original state. It has a lot of dumb shit in it, but it's still extremely good at its core. Hunted has some of the best ideas introduced in all of Ninjago, and it's a very good time, but its issues unfortunately are very noticeable. I'm not a big fan of the Oni and Dragon storyline. I think it gets very tiring after a while, and the villains are way too cookie cutter for my liking. Other than that, I love the Mad Max aesthetic, and all the stuff with Lloyd and the other Elemental Masters is excellent. Garmadon is the most opposing he's ever been, and there's a ton of strong moments from Hunted. Not my favorite, but still great. Master of the Mountain is when things really start to pick up again. We finally get a Cole-focused storyline that's actually good. It does retread a lot from Sons of Garmadon, and the villain honestly isn't that compelling, but everything else is just amazing. The animation is some of, if not the best in the franchise, and Cole really gets to prove himself this time around. He also goes sicko mode in this season, and you just love to see it. Rest in peace to Kirby Morrow. Now, I was really hoping this season would at least make it to the top 3, but after finishing Crystallize, which is the last canon season of Ninjago, I've come to realize the hype might have damaged this one for me. This season has such a strong start, and I love the way it ends, but there are just certain things about it that just really bug me, like only getting a glimpse of Lloyd's Oni form, the fact that almost everything the ninja used to win in the end is a complete ass pull, and something I was super scared of that unfortunately did happen. I do not like the final battle at all. The tension just isn't strong enough. The emotion is not there. You had the build up and you had the cool ideas like Lloyd finally getting to kill the Overlord once and for all, but it just doesn't hit the same. Plus, I don't know about you guys, but I could have used way more dramatic dialogue between them. I know it's probably impossible to top that battle, but I'm sorry, it felt half-assed. With that aside, the animation and some of the fights are easily the best in the show's 11-year history, and it ties up almost everything in a way I can really appreciate. Perhaps my expectations were too high, but can you blame me? They released the first 12 episodes at the end of May, and then didn't release the second half until October 10th in the US. Who the fuck does that? Well, stop it! Seabound was a season that completely blew my expectations out of the water, pun very much intended. Everything that happens is interesting and action-packed. I love how it continues the stuff built up from the island. The side characters like Benthama are some of the best we've had in a long time, and that ending hit super hard for me and a ton of other people. And I didn't notice this at first, but the entire premise of this season is a complete rip-off of Aquaman. I do think it works here, but the similarities are very hard to ignore. The villain is also very cartoonishly evil, not much motivation behind him, but I like him in the same way I like someone like Frieza, where he's just so evil and entertaining you don't care and just want to see more of him. I honestly wish he was in Crystallized instead of Esphira. This season also has probably the most emotional and impactful scenes in all of Ninjago. I'm not gonna lie, I nearly ended up shedding a single tear. One of Ninjago's strongest, no question. Sons of Garmadon was the first season to implement the movie designs, which definitely was not for everyone, but at least the animation itself got a significant upgrade. I love this season, man. When I watched this for the first time, I was immediately hooked back into the show. Everything they were doing was working for me. The new villains were great, especially in the case of Harumi. I love the look of Ninjago and the other places they travel to. This is probably the most balanced and well put together season of the entire show, and I don't say that lightly. It absolutely blew me away, and I could not recommend it enough. I mean, Lloyd just gets his ass completely eviscerated. How could this not be one of my favorites? What can I say that hasn't already been said about Tournament of Elements? The idea is genius. Chen is a great villain, and not just the action, but the dialogue and characterization is on a whole other level. My only hiccup with this season is that I never really liked the final stretch of episodes. Once they leave the island, the pacing drops to the floor, and I just wasn't really that invested up until the final stand. If this season had wrapped up while they were still on the island, this probably would have been number 1, but it doesn't, so unfortunately I'm knocking it back. I'm running out of positive adjectives, but Season 5 Possession is just fucking phenomenal. The villain is amazing, the ghost theme and characters are just amazing. Lloyd being the villain kind of is such a magnificent concept. This season also has the single hardest opening in all of Ninjago. I have this shit on repeat 24/7. It has the best intro, the best outfits, and one of the best villains. It's just incredible. Nia becoming the water ninja and discovering her true potential to defeat the cursed realm will always be a highlight for me. It's just consistently amazing. I don't think I can even do it justice just by talking about it. You need to experience it for yourself. Alright, that's the ranking. As a day one fan of Ninjago, it does hurt to see this series finally ending. However, at this point, I'm sure we have enough content to last another 11 years. And this isn't even the full conclusion. They are apparently doing something new with Ninjago next year, and Lord knows what that'll be about, but I guess we'll just have to see. I'll always love this show and keep yelling at people for how underrated it truly is. It's not like it's a hidden masterpiece or anything, but it's definitely better than it had any right being. I mean, why else would they make 15 seasons? This will be my final goodbye to the original series, and I hope all of you enjoyed this video, and if your list is different than mine, I'd be more than happy to come reply and bully you for being wrong. With all that said, for old time's sake, one last time, let's all jump up, kick back, whip around, and spin.